Yeah, thanks, Joel. At this time, I'd like to call the Planning Committee public meeting to order, and could I have a motion to adopt the agenda today? Councillor Vail, second by Mike Barkwell. All those in favor? That's carried. Are any declarations of pecuniary interest? None noted. If one arises, just please let the chair know. At this time, I'd like to introduce our committee. We have Mike Barkwell, Councillor Vail, Councillor Pat Dunn has joined us today, Mayor Andy Letham, I'm Pat O'Reilly, and Joel Watts is here. And as the planners appear, we'll introduce them as per the application. As required under the Planning Act, a public meeting is being held prior to the committee making a recommendation. I just want to remind you that these are just recommendations that are being made today, and these reports will be going forward to the September 15th council meeting. That's the September 15th council meeting, and here today we're here to gather information on the application and wish to hear from applicants and individuals on oral submissions on the application, and for the committee to ask questions of the applicants or staff at this time. So we'll get right into the meeting, and the first one on our agenda today is a zoning bylaw amendment for increased lot coverage, and Ian Walker, you're up.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. And so this application proposes a zoning amendment to change some of just the one zone standard on some of the properties in the proposed Ravines of Lindsay subdivision. So this being subdivision on Angeline Street, I've just shared it on the screen there. Opposite Orchard Park. It's a subdivision that was draft approved originally in 1994 by the province, and then recently revised in June of 2018 by the city. And as part of this development, they are now looking at just increasing the lot coverage from 35% to 45% on 125 of the lots. So this rezoning application was circulated in accordance with the Planning Act requirements. All landowners within 120 meters of the property were mailed a notice, and a sign was posted on the property. Prior to writing the report, I had received a couple inquiries from the public, two members being people that I think have proposed to purchase lots within this subdivision, and a third one being a neighbor in the subdivision to the south of it. Since writing the report, we had received comments from Orsi Group, which are the large property holders on the southwest of the CIC development. A copy has been provided to you in your packages. They are objecting to this application. We've also received comments from the solicitor for CIC Developments, which is this property, noting that they want this application to move forward. Not having really any public concerns that would be an issue with this, staff are still respectfully recommending that this be referred to council for approval. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Ian. Would the applicant for this party, would you wish to speak to this application?
Good afternoon. Hi, my name is Michael Bissett. I don't know if you can hear me. Assume you can.
I might get you to speak up a bit if you can, Michael, okay?
Oh, can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yeah, great, thanks.
Okay. Yeah, I've reviewed the report that Ian produced, and I'm in agreement with it, obviously, and I have no issues. I'm here to answer any questions. I would just note, I've also reviewed the letter from Orsi, and I just noted that had to do with traffic impacts in relation to Highway 35, and maybe what was not understood and what was clarified, I think, through the subsequent letter was that this isn't actually adding lots. This is just increasing the coverage on some lots. So it wouldn't have any impact from that standpoint. So it was a matter of clarification, I think. So anyway, if there's any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Thanks very much, Michael. So I'll ask members of the committee if they have any questions of the author of the report or Michael at this time. The report's pretty straightforward. As there seeing none, does anyone here wish to speak to this application? Does anybody wish to speak to this application? Is there anybody registered, Joel?
I don't believe so. Hold on. I'm just going to admit another phone who called in. I'm just not sure who they are. The person who called in 0715, can you state your name and what application you're interested in speaking to?
Bruce Vandenberg, I'm the owner, and I could be number 35.
Perfect. Thanks, Bruce. I just wanted to confirm that you weren't calling in to speak to this application. We'll get you to mute.
Will do.
Do we don't have a mover or second for the application. Moved by Councillor Dunn, seconded by Councillor Bale. The recommendation? Yes. Yeah. Yeah, as printed, that's right, Pat? Yeah, okay, as printed. Okay, further questions or discussion? All those in favor? That's carried. Next item is an application part lot 22, concession 4, the former town of Lindsay, is that former town Lindsay? CIC developments bylaw to amend, next one? That's one we just did? Yep. Okay, sorry. Sherry Ray, an application to amend the township building zoning bylaw. Sherry, you're up.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. Notice of the application was given to assessed owners within 500 meters of the subject land, and the property was posted by the city's sign company. The subject land, I apologize for not being able to screen share. I am working remotely today. My apologies, but I'll try to be as descriptive as possible. The subject land is located in the geographic township of Eldon, is accessed from Talbot River Road, just east of the Kirkfield Lake. It is approximately 94.9 hectares, which is 235 acres. Thank you very much. And it includes a 20.8 hectare or a 51 acre lake within the property. This lake is spring fed. It's located on the west side of the property. And I think if we could move to the next slide, it identifies how large the lake is. This property, this lake is known as Kirkfield Lake. The spring fed lake is a former unlicensed limestone quarry, which operated in the 50s and ultimately flooded and encouraged rehabilitation of the surrounding wetlands. The owner of the property has entered into a lease arrangement with a company known as Cabinscape. And Cabinscape is a Canadian-owned company which offers custom designed, low impact, and ecologically sound small cabins for intimate wilderness escapes. The company seeks remote access in Ontario for small scale, off-grid cabin rentals. And this property is ideal because of its significant size, 235 acres. It's remote in nature with a self-contained lake. And this lake's been naturalized from the time of flooding in the 50s. The application that you have before you proposes a temporary use zoning bylaw on just a small portion of the land to permit the commercial off-grid cabins to a maximum of 5 small cabins, each being about 160 square feet, 6 tent sites, which you can see in the middle of your screen there, and 1 common washroom facility being about 192 square feet. As you can see, there's an internal roadway throughout the property, which is actually will be built up a little bit from the existing roadway that's in there currently. Private docks for the cabins are proposed, and a communal dock and pavilion for common waterfront access for the water-based recreational activities. This proposal, temporary use zoning bylaw, represents the first phase of a further expansion of the building, of the business, to include additional cabins, but they will be based on the sustainability of the land. In support of the application, the temporary use application, the applicant submitted a planning justification report prepared by Kevin Duguay, and I believe Kevin's online to speak with you today. A functional servicing review prepared by Engage Engineering. The brief concludes that the low impact and sustainable nature of the proposed development will have no effect on stormwater quality or quantity. The cabins, 5 of them, and the 1 comfort station will have individual gray water class 2 septic systems, as well as composting toilets. Water supplied to each cabin and the comfort station are from direct lines from Kirkfield Lake, and they'll be treated within each tiny building to provide potable water. There was a reasonable use policy nitrate assessment prepared by Azimuth Environmental. This report also concluded that due to the proposed development on the site will not only be in compliance with MECP regulations, but it will have no impact to the groundwater regime and adjacent water supplies. There was a natural heritage evaluation prepared by Azimuth Environmental. Now this report represents a phase 1 of an NHE, which utilizes data from a previous development proposal and previous works that were done in 2007, 2008. So staff agreed for the approach that this could be used for the temporary use zoning bylaw. There was a traffic brief prepared by Azura Engineers. Once again, any additional trips will impose virtually no impact. Once again, 5 cabins, 6 tents. There was a stage 1 archaeological background study prepared. The summary of the study concluded that there is the potential for archaeological resources. We know moving forward, the temporary use is, as I said, temporary. All those buildings can be taken away. For the more permanent development, there's going to be additional works done. And the stage 1 that was done indicated that a stage 2 is warranted. And that is being undertaken with the additional work is being undertaken in conjunction with Kirkfield Lake First Nations. So you have a requirement for a temporary use bylaw. This utilizes section 39 of the Planning Act, which authorizes council to pass a bylaw under 34 to permit a temporary use. The applicant is requesting 2 years under the temporary use bylaw. Staff is recommending 3 years. We've been down this trail with another company that just needed additional time to get through the process, get their studies done. So staff is recommending 3 years in the draft bylaw that you have as Appendix C to the report. Under provincial policies, staff is satisfied that the temporary use application is consistent with the 2020 PPS, and it's supportive that the temporary use also conforms to the 2019 growth plan. The property is located in the Lake Simcoe watershed and is subject to the policies of the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan. The report outlines the conformity exercise and demonstrates that the application conforms to the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan as well as the phosphorus offsetting policies. We will see that again in more detail when and if a subsequent development application comes in. Under official plan conformity, the proposed development is within a rural designation. The rural designation permits active and passive recreational uses and facilities. As a result, the zoning bylaw conforms to the official plan. Under the zoning bylaw, the land is zoned A1, primarily on the west half of the property where you can see that the development is proposed, with the east side of the acreage zoned environmental protection. There's no development proposed in these areas at this time. Staff is recommending a site-specific agricultural exception to accommodate the proposed use. Under the servicing comments in the report, we did note that the FSR and the reasonable use nitrate assessment has been circulated. It should be noted that permits are required for those gray water systems. And as a result, the owner and the applicant are both well aware of that. Under agency comments, the report, I would like to highlight that the Economic Development Team Tourism is supportive of this application as it aligns with the ECDEV strategy objectives to increase the volume of year-round accommodations. of all kinds and in all markets, and to develop operator experiences to boost tourism traffic in the shoulder seasons and in the winter. It's my understanding from the website and in discussions with the Cabinscape that they propose use in the wintertime as well, which is great for our municipality. Subsequent to the preparation of the report, Engineering Division has submitted comments, indicated no concerns with the application, and Building Division has indicated that the general use building or the washroom facility has to be designed to accommodate barrier-free accessibility, and that the cabins are to be designed in conformity with minimum building code space requirements and minimum and permits issued under the Ontario Building Code. So in summary, staff is supportive of the application, and we respectfully recommend that the proposed temporary use bylaw application be approved. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Sherry. Kevin, do you wish to speak to this application?
Mr. Chairman, are you able to hear me?
We can hear you.
Great, thank you. To the Planning Advisory Committee members and staff, for the record, my name is Kevin Duguay. I am the planning consultant for the property owner, and I also work and represent Cabinscape. The owner of Cabinscape is actually in transit, and he may not be able to join the meeting, so he sends his apologies. We have considered the staff report produced by Sherry Ray. We concur with his recommendations. I also, just to put in perspective, that the 5 cabins, their size is essentially half the size of a standard elevated bungalow that you would find throughout the Lindsay community, for example. So it's very small development. It's in a portion of the property that is essentially already developed, having a series of interior roads and trails, focusing around the lake feature that is found on the property within its western portion and limits. I can also advise that Cabinscape, my company, our environmental consultant, and other professionals are immersed in a work program to address the potential future phases of this project. Ms. Ray did indicate in her opening remarks that this is a Canadian-owned company. They are, they do provide a series of off-grid camping experiences, typically in remote settings, environmentally based, and they've selected this site as meeting their criteria. I am aware that there is a waiting list to secure these cabins and tent sites. I think this would become a very interesting and promising economic boon for the community without really much having to be built. Finally, the temporary use bylaw that's proposed is reinforced by the nature of the building. So in the event that for some unforeseen reason that the property owner or the tenant decide not to proceed on a permanent basis, the structures can be wheeled off the site. So they're there on a temporary basis pursuant to the temporary bylaw approval being sought through this application. I'm available, Mr. Chairman, in the event there are any questions. And again, thank you to staff, and we concur with the recommendations of the staff report. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kevin. I'll just remain there. Members of the committee, do you have any questions of Sherry or Kevin on this application? Mayor Letham?
Yeah, just a quick one if I can. Thank you. For maybe Sherry. The temporary use bylaw that you've proposed at 3 years, if the applicant has their studies and wanted to put their permanent application in after 2 years, can that still be done, or do they have to wait till the temporary bylaw expires?
No, they do not have to wait at all. We could receive it next week.
Thank you.
They're free to file whenever.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak to these applications? Seeing none, does anybody Anybody that on Zoom or wish to speak to this application? Do we have anybody registered, Joel, do we believe?
I believe we have a Kim on the telephone line, but she indicated, or they indicated that they would only be listening in. So unless they want to speak and unmute by pressing *6, then I don't believe we have anyone else.
Kim, if you're registered, if you wish to speak, you can press *6 at this time if you wish to speak to this application. Otherwise, we'll go back to committee for a recommendation. Mayor Letham?
I'll give you the motion that it be approved as printed.
Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Vale. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next item is 035. It's an application to amend the Township of Mariposa zoning bylaw. Who's up here? We got David Harding is up. There's David. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just bear with me as I switch to the PowerPoint here. So the owners are Bruce and Sharon Vandenberg. Notice of the application was provided in accordance with the Planning Act. All registered property owners within 500 meters of the subject property were provided notice of the application, and a sign was posted on the property by the city sign company. So this application proposes to change the agricultural zoning on a portion of the property bordering Eldon Road within the hamlet of Oakwood to a residential zone category in order to facilitate the future severance of 3 rural residential lots. The middle lot is anticipated to be, will contain rather the existing farmhouse for the existing agricultural operation. So we can see the lots on the Appendix A here, kind of in the lower right-hand corner. And the next schedule shows the yellow area, which is the hamlet area of Oakwood. And you can also see there are some agricultural buildings in and around that area where the severances are proposed. So these existing agricultural buildings are proposed to remain on the agricultural lands to the west. Rezoning is also required to restrict the uses of these agricultural buildings to make sure that they cannot be used to house livestock or store manure. Since the writing of this report, comments have been received from Community Services Department, the Agricultural Development Officer, and Development Engineering. Development Engineering has noted that there are additional requirements that will need to be satisfied during the severance process. So work on this file is ongoing. There are some additional correspondence that is needed with other divisions in order to finalize the location of the proposed zone boundaries prior to bringing an updated staff report back in front of committee. Staff does not anticipate this application taking very long in order to come back before committee. Staff does respectfully recommend that the application be referred back to staff for further review and processing of the comments received after the report was written and the receipt of comments from any outstanding agencies. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, David. Bruce, did you wish to speak to your application? Bruce Vandenberg? Bruce, can you hear us? Do you wish to speak to this application? Can you get unlocked and muted or unmuted?
Yeah, sorry. Are
That's
you hearing
okay.
me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So, sorry, I thought I was unmuted. So, yeah, these in the hamlet of Oakwood, that was designated a long time ago. This was areas that had potential to be lots severed, my understanding. And so we're just following the guidelines, and if anyone has any questions for me, I'm willing to answer.
I'll just remain there, Bruce. We'll just ask members of the committee if they have any questions of Bruce or of the, at this time. He's also the applicant. Mayor Letham?
Yeah, just a quick one for David, if you can. You've got on the report that it's anticipated that these lots will connect to the municipal water system. Would they fall under our mandatory connection bylaw as they're building with frontage on water? Is that when you say they may fall under, would they not fall under the mandatory connect? Or is that comment you're waiting to hear back from servicing?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. I am looking to just clarify that, but I believe you are correct in that it would be subject to the mandatory servicing bylaw.
Thank you.
Looks
The
like
house is already on it. The 1-3.
Thank you for that, Bruce. Seeing no further questions, I just ask do you have a question? Yeah.
Just for David, sorry, when you were going through the report there, we're waiting on engineering for comments. Is that what we're waiting on?
It's primarily, through the chair, primarily it is, we're just waiting for MTO to give their all clear since this property does still abut that. And there's some correspondence that I still need to have with building division to make sure that there's no code separation issues, because some of those agricultural buildings are within 30 meters of the proposed lot lines.
Okay. So MTO, what would MTO have to do with this property?
They might not say much. I don't think they had much to say with the pre-consultation comments, but we just want to close off that commenting loop.
So we can expect that it would be back at the next planning meeting then?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Any further questions from members of the committee? Anyone from the public wish to speak to this application? Anyone from the public wish to speak to this application? Do we have anybody registered, Joel?
We do not.
Nobody is registered. So there's a recommendation in front of you. What's the committee's wish? Councillor Vale, moved by Councillor Vale, second by Mike Barkwell for the recommendation. That's referred back to staff at this time, waiting for the further comments, and if they come in, may even get back to the next meeting. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attendance. The next item on our agenda is an application to amend the Township of Emily zoning bylaw. David, you're up again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just advance the slide here. There might be a slight delay. There we go. So the owners are Ivan, Selma, I believe I pronounced that correctly, hopefully, Mark, and Loretta Gingrich. So the applicant is Daryl Ty and Emma Drake of the Young Wells Associates Limited. Notice of this application was provided in accordance with the Planning Act. All property owners within 500 meters of the subject property were provided notice of the application in mail, and a sign was posted on the lot as well. So the application proposes to add an approximately 600 square meter, here we go, 600 square meter roof truss manufacturing facility on a lot containing an existing farm operation. So I've just zoomed into the area containing the farm buildings on the lot. So right now the roof manufacturing facility is proposed to the north of the farmhouse and to the west of the existing cluster of agricultural buildings. So this roof truss facility is proposed to manufacture agricultural roof trusses and to have up to 4 employees, including the owner, and up to 5 customers a day. Since the writing of the report, some comments of concern and objection have been received from 3 members of the public. So we have John Peter Edward Putnins of no declared address, Greg Starosta of 96 Rabbit Run, and Jim and Lisa Gowdy of 925 Centerline Road. So these concerns primarily revolve around the placement of the facility in front of the other farm buildings, the scale of manufacture contemplated in an agricultural area, the loss of agricultural land, the ability of the existing road network to support the anticipated semi-tractor trailers that will both deliver materials and remove completed trusses from the facility, and some clarifications and omissions sought of the planning justification report that was submitted in support of the application. So in response to the concerns raised about the capability of the road network to support trucks, development engineering has now required the applicant to prepare a traffic impact statement to determine if any upgrades are required. Comments of support were also received from Amon Martin of 820 Centerline Road, and there were agency comments received as well from the Agricultural Development Officer, which is in support of the application, and the Community Services Department, which has no concerns with the application. So review of this file is ongoing based on the comments received to date from both the public and from Engineering Division, and the additional documentation that will need to be reviewed based on that comment from Engineering. So staff respectfully recommends that the committee consider referring the application back to staff for further review and processing until such time as that traffic impact statement is submitted and can be further reviewed by city staff. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that, David. Does someone from Daryl Ty or Daryl from DM Wells wish to speak to this application?
Hi, Mr. Chairman. This is Emma Drake, and together with Daryl Ty, we are the applicants for this file on behalf of our client, Mark Gingrich. And if permitted, I'd like to just take a couple of minutes to speak quickly to this application. We have reviewed the report prepared by staff and note that the internal review of the application is ongoing as certain comments remain outstanding and in light of some of the public comments received. But I would just like to provide a really quick planning analysis of the proposal for the committee's consideration. This property is recognized as being on prime agricultural lands under the policies of the PPS and the growth plan. The policies of both the PPS and the growth plan direct that prime ag lands are to be protected while also recognizing that on-farm diversified uses may be permitted. On-farm diversified uses as recognized by the province include home industries such as woodworking shops and manufacturing facilities, and it's therefore our opinion that this facility meets the on-farm diversified use definition. The proposed development also meets the 5 criteria for on-farm diversified uses, being that it is located on a farm. It will be secondary to the principal agricultural use. It is limited in area, so under provincial guidelines, it is required to be less than 2% of property area or less than 1 acre. And this is less than 1 acre and less than 1% of the total property area. As I mentioned, this is a home industry, and it is our opinion that this proposal is compatible with and will not hinder any surrounding agricultural operations. And we have provided further information on this to staff in the form of some additional comments, the planning justification report, and an agricultural impact brief. With respect to the city's official plan, the subject lands are likewise designated prime agricultural, which permit secondary uses and promote diversification to ensure viable agricultural operations. This proposed roof truss facility would provide the opportunity for the applicants to diversify and enhance the economic opportunity available on farm, while maintaining the primary agricultural use of the subject lands and contributing to the agricultural community through the manufacture of agricultural roof trusses. We therefore believe that the application and amendment are consistent with the policy direction of the official plan. The subject lands are currently zoned agricultural zone, which does not recognize a roof truss facility being a manufacturing use as permitted. This zoning bylaw amendment application is therefore requesting that the proposed facility be recognized as a permitted use through a site-specific agricultural exception zoning, which would also serve to recognize the location of the accessory or secondary building, parking, and the size of the building as well. To note, while this building is in front of the existing building envelope, it does maintain enhanced setbacks from the property lines. So it is over 130 meters from the front lot line on Centerline Road, and it's over 116 meters from the exterior lot line on Sunnywood. Based on our assessment, we believe this application upholds the spirit and intent of both provincial and local planning policy and would facilitate enhanced and diversified economic on-farm opportunities, which is encouraged at both a provincial and local level. We do recognize, as David has mentioned, that there are certain comments received by the public, which largely pertain to the secondary use, the size of the building, as well as some concerns with overall rural character and traffic. To note, based on our assessment, it appears that most of these comments are largely related to rural lifestyle and the landscape, and none of the concerns appear to be directly related to the use of the facility for roof truss manufacture. Our office has provided a response to all public comments that we have received as of end of day yesterday, and I'd just like to really briefly summarize our response for the committee's consideration. As I have mentioned, this proposed use would be secondary to the agricultural use of the property. The proponent intends to continue to actively work on the dairy operation, with this facility being a means to provide secondary diversified income. Moreover, the large size of the facility, as mentioned, it's about 600 square meters, is required to accommodate the process and the products. So roof trusses can evidently be of an increased size, and so the increased size of the building is required in order to assemble them. However, as I mentioned, this facility will be less than 1% of the overall property area and is of a size that is typically consistent with what you would see for agricultural outbuildings. It is also going to be designed in a manner similar to what you would expect for agricultural outbuildings. It's expected to be steel clad, and as mentioned, will be significantly set back from property lines. It's therefore our belief that this will not upset rural character and will blend in with the existing landscape. With respect to traffic, we do note that a traffic impact study was just requested yesterday from City Engineering. This is a low volume use. It's not expected to generate a lot of traffic. And as I understand, Centerline Road is a relatively low volume road already. So we are working with the city right now to confirm the requirements for that traffic impact statement, or otherwise if there's other information we can provide to satisfy these concerns. Notwithstanding, we do recognize that because of some of these concerns, further analysis by the city may be required, and we are in agreement with staff's recommendation to refer this back to staff in order to further address any comments. We are hopeful that this application can quickly be brought back to the committee for consideration and hopeful approval. That concludes my comments. I am available if there are any questions. And our client, property owner, Mark Gingrich, is also joining via telephone if there are any questions directly of him. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Emma, for that report. If you just stay there, we'll see if members of committee have any questions. Members of committee have any questions of Emma or David at this time? Mayor Latham.
Thank you. Just a quick one, if I could, for Emma. Thank you for your presentation. It cleared up a few things. The only, and I don't need it today, I mean, maybe when the report comes back with a recommendation, but where I'm struggling a little bit is how are roof trusses considered a secondary use to agriculture? I'm just trying to make that tie in with the two. You know, I get if you're raising pigs, you're making bacon, that's a secondary use. I'm struggling with an agricultural use and how you're tying in a secondary use for roof trusses. So I'm just wondering if you have a comment on that.
So through the chair, secondary generally pertains to essentially not primary. So as I mentioned, the primary use of the property is agriculture. They're going to continue to be operating the dairy facility, and that will be the primary use of the property. This will be secondary in size in that it's not intended to be the primary use of the property, and it's just meant to act as a supplemental income source. So this would be similar to some other applications that have been seen throughout the city for secondary uses. I believe there was a steel shop that was recently approved, and some other woodworking facilities that are secondary to the agricultural operation, and this would be consistent in that regard.
That's what I needed. Thank you.
Members of the committee, any further questions? I think maybe just further to that, Mr. Gingrich is a barn builder as well, and he builds a lot of very large barns, so they need a lot of very large trusses, and he's built, I know, some very large dairy barns as well as other barns as well. So I just have one question of David. David, what triggers a traffic study? Or what, in this particular case, like it's fairly low volume, and would you have a response?
Mr. Chair, I would defer to engineering to answer that.
We don't need, oh, Christine is there. Okay, great, Christine.
Good afternoon, members of committee and applicants. Through you, Mr. Chair, in this situation during the pre-consultation, it was determined that through discussions at pre-consultation that likely with the on-farm diversified use, the type of vehicles that would be traveling into this site and out of this site would be primarily the same as the agricultural operation that was there at the time. However, having received some comments from the public and direction from planning to address those comments, we have looked into the traffic known factors in this area, and Central Line Road has been identified as having some deficiencies in geometrics through this particular section. So what we have asked for is not a traffic study, but a follow-up traffic statement to address the types of loads that are being proposed, size of trucks, weight of trucks, et cetera, and then to have this operation confirm that they can actually use Central Line sufficiently for their operation at this time. So it's really as a result of some additional commentary and some additional detail that has come out subsequent to our previous discussion.
Thanks for that, Christine. Appreciate that. No further questions from members of the committee. Mike Barkwell?
My question, David, was similar to the mayor's. In your report, you say that a review with respect to conformity with the official plan is ongoing. And who makes that decision? I think Emma said that there were 5 areas that were secondary to farming, and I wonder, do you make that decision, that recommendation, or is that our committee who has to listen to what's going on and then make that decision, whether it conforms or not?
Through the chair, yes, I will be making a recommendation.
And that'll come to the, when the final report comes back to committee with it in it, I presume. Thanks, David. Does anybody else wish to speak to this application? Do we have anybody registered? Do we know? We had a couple letters in our package from the neighbors, but Mark, is there anything you further, or you're there? If I think Emma covered most of it. I didn't know if there's anything you further wanted to add to it. You're on the phone, so I think Emma pretty well covered it, and it's coming back anyways, and not too distant future. So, members of the committee, there's a recommendation in your package, Mayor Letham.
I'll move that it be as printed, that it be referred back to staff.
Seconded by Councillor Dunn. Further discussion? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you for your attendance. The next item is item number 5037, an application to amend the United Township of Laxton, Digby, and Longford zoning. And we have David up again. You're on a roll here, David.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the owners are Anna DeCuna and David Potter. Notice of the application was provided in accordance with the Planning Act. All property owners within 500 meters of the subject property were provided a notice in the mail, and a sign was posted on the property by the city's sign company. So the application proposes to change the zoning on the property from open space zone to a residential zone category to recognize the existing residential use. Since the writing of this report, comments have been received from the building division, which has identified that there is an open building permit on this property in the form of no occupancy final inspection. From the pre-consultation comments, it was recognized that there are some environmental concerns that need to be addressed when considering the boundaries of the residential zone category to be imposed. Comments from the KRCA are outstanding, but correspondence has been ongoing with their office. Staff does respectfully recommend that the committee consider referring the application back to staff for further review and processing until such time as all comments have been received from all circulated agencies and departments, and a bylaw can be brought forward for review and commentary. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks very much, David. Doug, you're up next. Speak to this application.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With respect to the recommendation, I'm under instructions to ask the committee to set aside the request for deferral and to proceed to continue the consideration of this application. And if you agree, to move it forward with your recommendation that the application be endorsed and subsequently moved forward to council for the bylaw to be considered and ultimately approved. The issues with respect to the building permit go all the way back to the year 2000 when the township of Laxton, Digby, and Longford issued a building permit for the existing dwelling. The health unit issued an approval for the septic system. At that time, the pre-existing dwelling was removed and the existing dwelling was constructed. In intervening 20 years, there's been, to our knowledge, no record of complaint from anyone or any agency about the residential use of this property. In speaking with the owner this morning, Mr. Potter, he confirmed that he purchased the property in 2018, and during his 3 years of occupancy and use, he's not experienced any flooding of property or of the building. We have proposed in the application that the open space zone be changed to limited service residential because the property fronts on the corner of Curls Road and does not have full frontage on the assumed portion of Curls Road, as you can see from the sketch that David provided in his report. The issue with regard to elevation, as of several months ago, we asked the question whether or not there is a flood elevation documented by Ministry of Natural Resources for Duck Lake. Ministry of Natural Resources and KRCA have not yet been able to determine what the flood elevation is of Duck Lake. However, the owner did prepare a topographic survey and submit that to the municipality and the Conservation Authority at the early stages of this application being submitted. So if there is no evidence of flooding along the shoreline into the property, no evidence of erosion or scouring occurring as a result of historical flooding or erosion of the shoreline, it is highly likely that there is flooding of property as the elevation of Duck Lake goes up and down seasonally. We would request that the committee consider these matters, receive David's report, and recommend approval for the application and that a bylaw be prepared and forwarded to council for approval. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. You've just remained there. See if you have any questions. Members of the committee, do you have questions of the author of the report or of Doug at this time? Mayor Latham? Yeah.
Quick one for David, if I could. David, is this property in the KRCA regulated area, or are we just asking them for comment as a courtesy?
Through the chair, so we are asking for their comment as our environmental review agency because it is outside of their regulated area.
It's outside of their regulated area, okay. So based on some of the back and forth, would you have any objections from a planning perspective? I hear what you're saying, if we approve this and move it forward for approval at the next council meeting?
Through the chair, personally, I do have concerns just because of the types of comments that were brought forward at the pre-consultation stage. There was over 2 pages of comments from KRCA, and it might be beneficial to have a bylaw for the committee to review and have that debate in a public meeting setting. And to have that further correspondence with KRCA around how that bylaw would be structured.
Okay, thank you.
Any other members of committee have any questions? Councillor Vail.
How long have we been waiting for KRCA to respond?
Through the chair. So this was circulated for comment on August 11th. Through correspondence with their office this morning, it seems like Canada Post did not deliver until yesterday.
Any further questions from members of committee? We'll just see if there's anybody else wishes to speak to this application. Do we have anybody registered on it, Joel?
I don't believe so, no.
Nobody registered, so it doesn't sound like anybody wishes to speak. There's a recommend. What's the committee's wishes? Mayor Latham?
Well, David knew he's gonna get mad at me for one report today anyway, so might as well be this one. So I'm gonna make the recommendation that the report be received and that the zoning bylaw amendment be forwarded to council, be approved and adopted, and move forward. And if I get a seconder, I'll speak to it.
Councillor Vail, you want to speak to Mayor
Yeah,
Latham?
I just, you know what, I hear what we're saying. It's, you know, we're waiting for comments and it's been held up a little bit, whatever, through communication with KRCA. But at the same time, this is a property that was done 20 years ago and, you know, it's not something new. It's there. They're trying to bring it into conformity and I don't know. I don't know if it's as complicated as it needs to be. I'm not a planner, so I certainly respect what David's saying, but I think we're going to put a little pressure on him and see if we can get a bylaw back at council and deal with some of these issues. So that's my recommendation anyways, and David can deal with me later.
Councillor Vail, do you wish to speak to it?
No, I concur with the mayor's comments. It's just everything is already there and has been there for 20 years. So I'm just not sure waiting for comments changes anything, right?
Okay, there's the motion that go forward to council. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That carries. The next application is 038. It's an application to amend the Township Manvers zoning bylaw. Kent, you're up. We're just going down the hall, Kent.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we're sharing a laptop today for its camera capability, so bear with us a moment while we transfer rooms.
All right, I think we're ready, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, you can proceed, Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The owner is Randy Shea, represented by Bob Clark of Clark Consulting Services. Notice of application was provided in accordance with the Planning Act. All registered property owners within 500 meters of the lot were provided notice of the application, and one sign was posted at the entryway to 438 St. Mary's Road by the city's sign company. Bear with me here as I change slides. It's thinking.
Ours are changed.
Your slides changed?
Yeah, the one in the council chambers are changed, Kent.
There we go. Great. The application is for an amendment to the zoning bylaw, which relates to a condition of provisional consent, whereby the agricultural lands to be retained are to be rezoned to prohibit future residential uses and consolidated with a non-abutting farm parcel to the south, which is divided by Pigeon Creek Road. The severed parcel will be rezoned to the rural residential type 1 zone that acknowledges the existing single detached dwelling and prohibits agricultural uses. The single detached dwelling is deemed surplus to the needs of the farm operation. The application does not conflict with the 2020 provincial policy statement and the 2019 growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, as both documents encourage agricultural areas to be protected for long-term use. Normal farm practices shall be promoted and protected in accordance with provincial standards, and the surplus farm dwelling severance ensures no conflict with the established rural landscape. Next slide, please. The proposal also conforms to the rural designation policies of the city's official plan, as agricultural land, again, shall be protected from fragmentation, development, and land uses unrelated to agriculture. One of the objectives of the official plan is to support farming operations as an important component of the economy, a source of employment, and a way of life for many rural residents. Staff is proposing a draft zoning bylaw that rezones the retained lands to a rural general exception zone to prohibit residential uses and protect the agricultural use of the land. The retained lands exceed the minimum lot area and frontage requirements of the rural general zone. The severed lands will be rezoned to a rural residential type 1 zone to acknowledge the existing single detached dwelling on the parcel. The R1 zone also prohibits agricultural uses. Since the writing of the report, comments have been received from Engineering Division, Building Division, the Agricultural Officer of the Economic Development Division, and the Community Services Department, and they have no objections to the proposal. Staff respectfully recommends the committee consider referring the zoning bylaw amendment application to council for approval. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that report, Kent. Bob Clark, are you on the screen? Can you come in if you wish to speak to this application? We don't think Bob is registered? Okay. Pretty confident in your report, Kent. Anyways, seeing there's no one ready, does anyone else wish to speak to this application? Do we have anybody registered? Shays are related to most of them down there, so likely they're all on site. Councillor Dunn? As printed. Do I have a seconder? Second by Councillor Bale. Further discussion on this? All in favor? That's carried. Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Kent.
You're welcome, Mr. Chair. Just bear with us a second as I bring the next planner into the room.
Okay, the next application is application number 038. Application to amend, pardon me? Yeah, 0.7. It's an application to amend the City of Kawartha Lake's official plan. Jonathan, you're up next. Towards welcome to City of Kawartha Lakes, your new planner, and welcome to our committee, and thanks for coming to work here.
Thank you, sir. It's been so far so good. It's been about 4 months, and I'm happy to finally be in front of this group. Can everyone see and hear me okay? That's all good? I am just going to get to the slideshow. Perfect. So in front of us, we have a official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment for 1590 Elm Tree Road in the geographic township of Ops. This application, the intent of this application is to facilitate the development of a trucking terminal for Marquis Trucking that is currently located in Little Britain area. The idea is for that applicant to relocate and expand services to a parcel closer to Lindsay. The application was submitted by Emma Drake and DM Wills Associates Limited on behalf of the owners of the property, Wayne and Anne McLeish. So first off, the official plan amendment, the entire parcel is designated as prime agricultural lands, which requires a minimum lot size of 40 hectares. The official plan amendment is proposed to sever the property to include a parcel that would be about 4.1 hectares. And the retained being about 5.9, still maintaining the prime agricultural designation. The proposed use is a trucking terminal that is agriculturally supported, as it does support the agricultural network in the area. To note, the existing use located at 82 Zion Road is also under the prime agricultural designation. So this is previously was a supported use in the area and would fit in terms of a land use appropriately within this designation. This one and the official plan amendment does request that the retained parcel be less than 40 hectares. To permit this use, policy analysis was done in consultation with the provincial policy statements, the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, as well as the City of Kawartha Lake's official plan. It is generally supported that this use, given the parcel size, is appropriate for the designation. In support of this application, an agricultural impact assessment as part of the planning justification report was submitted that does indicate that the soils on the parcel to be severed are not as of strong yield, so this use would be appropriate for the area. The zoning bylaw amendment is to permit the use through the zoning bylaw. Currently, the entire parcel is zoned A for agricultural, and proposed is to rezone the severed parcel to A1 agricultural support by way of an exception zone to permit the use, as currently trucking terminal is not permitted in the agricultural support zone. It would be built into an exception zone to allow for the trucking terminal facility, as well as a greenhouse nursery, bulk agricultural and seed storage, and truck and tractor repair and sales. As part of the consultation and as per the Planning Act, property owners within 500 meters were notified of this application, as well as a sign was installed on the property. 2 letters thus far in support of the application have been received, and we are still waiting on comments back from a few internal agencies, as well as MTO and the Kawartha Regional Conservation Authority. To note, in this northeast part of the property is a significant wetland and natural heritage feature. That part of that property, the northeast corner, is to be zoned HL for hazard land, which would require the conservation of that natural heritage feature, a requirement that was outlined by the KRCA and indicated and written about in the environmental impact study provided by the applicant in support of this application. And there is, as you can see on the map, the KRCA has a regulated area within primarily the eastern side of the property. As part of the application, a traffic impact study was required during the pre-consultation stage and submitted. It indicated that no impact to current service levels would occur should this application be approved, as well as a wetland compensation plan prepared by Niblett Environmental Associates was submitted, indicating a proper wetland compensation process, given that part of the wetland in the northeast corner cannot be retained given the proposed development. Through the site plan process, it will be ensured that the wetland compensation plan is followed through. Additionally, a functional service report, was submitted by DM Wills and Associates, prescribing that an on-site sewage disposal system is required. This property is serviced by municipal water. However, fire suppression is not, the pipe in the ground does not have capacity for fire suppression. So there will have to be an on-site fire suppression system installed, and which we will cover when it comes to the site plan for the application. Generally, this application does align with the provincial policy statements, the growth plan, and the official plan, as it is agriculturally supportive in nature and will generate an economic boost to the agricultural support network and the surrounding area. The location along Highway 7 is a transportation corridor and will benefit by increasing the usage of existing transportation infrastructure, as well as inherently connecting to the rest of the transportation network. Staff is respectfully recommending that at this time, the application be referred back to ensure we collect all comments from the agencies, including the KRCA, specifically about the environmental impact study, as well as MTO regarding the traffic impact study.
Thanks for that, Jonathan. Are you through?
I am through. That is all. I'm unable to see my face, so I'm a little not. So, but yes, I'm good.
No, thank you very much for that. Emma, do you wish to speak to this application?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you, and hello again to everybody. As noted, these applications are proposed in order to facilitate the development of a 4.1 hectare portion of the subject property in the form of a truck terminal for local trucking company Jamie Marquis Trucking Inc., which specializes in hauling agricultural goods, including feeds and fertilizers. We have reviewed the planning report prepared by city staff and our agreement with staff's assessment and analysis as it pertains to relevant planning policy. Approval of these applications would enable Marquis Trucking to relocate and expand operations in an area that is central and conducive to ongoing business operations, and would provide advantages with the proximity to the Highway 7 corridor and surrounding agribusinesses in the area. Approval of the applications would also serve to benefit the greater agri-food network and the agricultural economy in Kirkfield Lakes. Many local farms and local farm businesses are served by Marquis Trucking, which has been well established in the city for about 20 years. These applications will enable the business to continue to grow, providing continued and enhanced service to the local agricultural community, while also providing for job creation in the city as the business continues to expand its fleet. It is our opinion that these applications uphold all relevant planning policy and will provide a net benefit to the agri-food network in the city, while providing appropriate respect to and compensation of environmental features. We do recognize that, as John has noted, there are some agency comments that are outstanding and some items to be addressed at the site plan stage and through the site plan process. However, overall, it is our opinion that these applications represent good planning and are consistent with the goals and objectives of both provincial and municipal planning policy. We are therefore hopeful that these applications can return quickly to the committee with a recommendation for approval to council. I would like to thank city staff for their continued assistance with this file and thank the chair and members of the committee today for consideration of these applications. If there are any questions, I would be pleased to answer anything that comes up. Otherwise, that's it for my comments.
Thanks, Emma. We'll just see if members of the committee have any questions of the Jonathan or Emma. Councillor Dunn.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Question through you to Jonathan. Jonathan, you mentioned there was other agencies that had to be consulted. It seems we've done a traffic impact study, so that tells me engineering's being consulted. KRCA, to the best of my knowledge, and only because I sit on the KRCA board, has already signed off on this. Who's left besides the MTO?
So, Councillor Dunn through the chair, the KRCA is to close the comment loop. We'll be reviewing the environmental impact study that was submitted. I have yet to hear back from them on a formal approval or clearance for that specific item, as well as MTO is going to review the traffic impact study. As indicated, the property is right along Highway 7. Those are the two outside agencies. I'm still waiting on comments back from community services here within the city. Just to note, since the report was written, I did receive a letter of support from the agricultural ACDEV officer for this application as well.
Do we have any idea what the time frame is to get a report back from the MTO?
Through the chair, they indicated that September 15th is an ETA for said comments.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions of members of the committee on this report? Do we have anybody registered, do we, Joel? Does anybody else wish to speak to this report? Anybody else wish to speak to this report? Seeing none, there's a recommendation in Councillor Dunn as printed. Do a seconder. Andrew? Further discussion? All those in favor? That's carried. The next application is an application to amend the Town of Lindsay zoning bylaw, described part lot north side of Glenelg Street. And Mark LaHaye, you're up. Okay, go ahead, Mark. As the author of the report, carry on.
Yes, good afternoon, members of committee. So this application notice was given for a zoning bylaw amendment for each assessed land owner within 120 meters and all applicable agencies and departments. And a sign was posted on the property in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act. The subject lands are located at the southwest corner of Lindsay Street South and Glenelg Street West in the former town of Lindsay. The portion of the overall property that's being used for commercial purposes is addressed as 37 Lindsay Street South, while the portion of the property that's being used for residential purposes is addressed as 6 Glenelg Street West, which is actually in the southwest corner of that overall parcel of land you see on the screen. The owner has applied for a rezoning to facilitate a condition of consent to sever the southwest portion of the subject lands that contains an existing residential building that contains 4 dwelling units in order to create a separate residential lot. The owner has previously applied to sever approximately 447 square meters of land that contains a two-story brick dwelling that fronts on and is addressed as 6 Glenelg Street West, and retain approximately 3,345 square meters of commercial lands that contains a two-story brick commercial building, which is addressed as 37 Lindsay Street South. The severed land will recognize and establish the residential dwelling on a standalone parcel, which has a separate assessment roll number. However, as both addresses share the same property identifier or PIN, the proposed severed and retained parcels are considered a single entity on title and not separately conveyable until the consent application process can be finalized. And that would legally remove the legal or the residential parcel from the overall land holdings. Various documents and plans were submitted by the applicant in support of the proposed amendment, and staff have reviewed these documents and are generally satisfied in the context of applicable policies and plans. The application demonstrates consistency with the provincial policy statement and conformity to the growth plan and the Town of Lindsay official plan. The proposed zoning amendment will appropriately facilitate the severance of the subject lands with site-specific development standards to be implemented, including reduced minimum lot area and frontage, reduced minimum interior side yard setback, and reduced minimum rear yard setback and number of required parking spaces. This application has been reviewed in consideration of the comments from the circulated departments and agencies and relevant provincial policies and the town's official plan and zoning, the Town of Lindsay official plan and zoning bylaw. In consideration of these comments and the comments in the report, provided there's no additional information that is raised at this public meeting that would alter the recommendation, staff respectfully recommends that the proposed rezoning application and a respective zoning bylaw be referred to council for approval. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mark, for that report. And Doug, do you wish to speak to this application?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've reviewed the staff report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've reviewed the staff report and no objection to the recommendation. I'm available to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you for that. Just wait there. Members of committee, I've seen the report. Do you have any questions of the author of the report or of Doug? Seeing none, do we have anybody registered to speak to this application?
There are none registered.
None registering, none registered. Does anybody that's watching wish to speak to this application? You wish to speak to this application? Seeing no one, there's a recommendation there. Councillor Vale. Seconded by Mike Barkwell. Further discussion? All those in favor? That's carried. So the next report, you're up, Mark, as an application to amend the Township Eldon zoning bylaw. Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Notice for this application was given to each assessed landowner within 500 meters and a local agency, and a sign was posted on the property for the requirements of the Planning Act. The subject property is located within a prime agricultural area northeast of the village of Woodville, located between the road and Marble Road, on the east side of the road and west side of Santee Road. The owner has applied to permit an accessory dwelling unit at the east side of main on the subject. The effect of this application is to permit a second dwelling unit on the property which is accessory to a main permitted agricultural use, which will share access from Kirkfield Road and will share the existing well and septic system that services the main dwelling. The proposed accessory dwelling unit is for use by the parents of one of the existing farm owners to be present on the property to assist with the farm operation and also to receive necessary care. Agricultural land impacts are minimized as the proposed attached second dwelling unit will be in an area that's not currently used for agricultural use. And there obviously would not be any severance opportunity. Various documents and plans were submitted by the applicant in support of the proposed amendment. In addition, there was an MDS calculation that was prepared, which concludes that the MDS setbacks are met for type 1 land uses in relation to the existing barns within the review area. Since the writing of this report, we have received comments from the Agricultural Economic Development Officer on August 27th, advising of no concerns with this application, as the second dwelling unit is accessory to the agricultural use, does not impact on agricultural land, and will be built within an existing footprint. The application conforms to the policies of the 2019 growth plan and appears to be consistent with the provincial policy statement, and as well generally conforms with the policies of the City of Kawartha Lake's official plan. The application has been reviewed in consideration of the comments from circulated departments and external agencies, relevant provincial policies, and the City of Kawartha Lake's official plan, as well as the Township of Eldon zoning bylaw. In consideration of these comments, and provided there's no additional information that's raised at this public meeting that would alter this recommendation, staff respectfully recommends that the proposed rezoning application and a bylaw be referred to council for approval. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Mark. I see the applicant, William Yates, is on the report. Has he phoned in? Joyce? Okay, whoever is the applicant that's speaking on behalf, you wish to dial in at this time.
Thank you, Mark Lehay. We have no further comments.
Would you just say your name for the record?
It's Joyce Yates.
Joyce Yates?
William is sitting beside me. Joyce Yates.
Great, thank you for that. Just remain there. I'll see if members of the committee have any questions. Have any questions of the author of the report or the applicant? Seeing none, what's committee's wishes? Councillor Vail? The recommendation as printed, second by Mike Barkwell. Any further discussion? No, did anybody else registered to speak to this application? Sorry. Nobody else is registered. Does anybody that's watching wish to respond on Zoom? Anybody? Seeing none, although we got a mover and a seconder, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. I don't see we have any deputations. No further correspondence, I don't believe, is there, Joel? Did you have something to mention about the return plan? Okay, and no City of Kawartha Lakes reports. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Vail, Mayor Latham. All those in favor. I guess we don't have to vote on it, but anyways, we're out of here for 2:30. Everybody have a good day. Enjoy the rest of the day.